More fire. Danger for the Elven hill. Jonathan gazed up at the blue sky as he lay in the green grass on this glorious summer day. Holidays at last. Sweet idleness. He could while away the time without his mother or father scolding him. As he lay there watching the big clouds drifting leisurely across the sky like huge white sheep, he wondered to himself what it would be like inside such a big cloud. Probably like being in a giant bowl of milk soup, he imagined. Or like thick fog, so thick you cannot see your hand in front of your face. These clouds could be truly massive. He had read in a book that they all had rather strange names. There were the delicate feathery clouds high up in the sky, then the thick white fleecy clouds that were constantly changing shape and where you could sometimes make out shapes or animals, and the low-lying dark rain clouds. They were called cirrus, cumulus and stratus clouds. And there were many people out here in the countryside who looked up at the sky, watched the clouds, and could then predict whether it would rain or whether the day would stay dry and they could bring in the harvest. But there is a completely different story behind some clouds, and Jonathan was soon to discover this in a strange way. So there he lay in the grass, watching the white clouds, and a very strange feeling came over him. We would probably describe it most aptly as wanderlust. Just to travel on a cloud like that. Oh, how lovely it would be to see the world from up there, sighed Jonathan. Jonathan had never traveled before, nor had he ever seen the sea, but he had heard at school about foreign lands and the sea, which was not supposed to be all that far away, as the schoolmaster had said. But here in the countryside, people had other concerns than traveling. So all that was left for Jonathan was to dream, which was not forbidden, of course. I wonder how long a cloud like that can drift across the sky, Jonathan asked himself. You have got a lot of questions, remarked a squeaky voice beside him. Jonathan was startled. He was sure he had been all alone in the meadow. He sat up straight, instantly forgetting the clouds and his dreams, and focused on his surroundings. He could not see anyone. Soon he thought he had just imagined the voice. My imagination is running wild, Jonathan reassured himself. Running wild? I wager you do not even know how to do that, said the high-pitched voice again. This is getting a bit too strange for me, cried Jonathan. I heard you quite clearly, but I cannot see you. Oh, right. Well, I can fix that. Just a moment. The voice fell silent. Jonathan heard a snap of the fingers, and before him stood a tiny creature, barely reaching his knees. You are surprised, are you not? Asked the little creature. Yes. Who are you? Jonathan wanted to know. And how did you get out here onto the meadow? I am the elf Marylind, and I actually live in this meadow right there on that hill, replied the elf. I am Jonathan from the moorland farm down there, Jonathan introduced himself. He was a bit taken aback. It was not every day you met an elf in your parents' meadow. Then Jonathan said, I have never seen you here before, and I am already 10 years old. Yes, said the elf. Normally people do not see us either, but now something has happened, and I have been chosen to ask you or another human for help, because my whole people are in danger. Your whole people? I thought you lived over there by the hill. Yes, but not on our own. We have been living there for centuries. Everything has been fine until now, but something has happened that could have catastrophic consequences for both the elves and the people here if we do not act together to stop it. Good heavens, what on earth has happened? Cried Jonathan, jumping to his feet. Come, I will show you. It is still in its early stages, but if we do not stop it, it will be bad for my people and for you. Jonathan was alarmed. Even though he did not yet know what the danger was, it was clear that he would try to help as best he could. What on earth could be so bad here in this green meadow? Jonathan could not make sense of it all, but he followed the little elf at a measured pace. What boy would not be curious when a real elf, and one with such a lovely name as Marylind at that, asked for help? Marylind scampered around the hill, Jonathan in her wake. At last, Marylind stopped. "Feel here on the ground," she said to Jonathan. He bent down and placed his hand on the ground, flattening the grass. It felt warm, too warm for just a few rays of sunshine. "And inside the hill, we live in it, you know. It is even warmer." Now Jonathan was alarmed. There was nothing he could do about it himself. He had to tell his father and grandfather immediately. "Merciful heavens," he said to Marylind. "I hope it is not what I fear it is, a Moor fire. I must show this to my people straight away. They will certainly know what to do. In the meantime, I will let my people know so that no one accidentally gets in your way." She ran round the hill and disappeared through an almost invisible opening in the hill. Jonathan, on the other hand, took to his heels and ran as fast as he could to his father, who was out on the moor cutting peat. "Father, father!" he cried, completely out of breath. "Come quickly, I think we have got a Moor fire. Hurry, father, the ground is already burning hot." Good heavens! His father dropped everything, ordered the work to stop, and told everyone to head for the shed. He himself followed his son with long strides all the way back to the meadow, where just a short while ago Jonathan had been dreaming of his clouds. "Here, father, feel the ground!" Jonathan pointed exactly to the spot where he had already placed his hand on the meadow. Merciful heavens! Jonathan's father was now extremely alarmed too. "How on earth did you end up in this spot?" Jonathan thought it best not to mention Marylind. They might laugh at him. So he simply said, telling only half the truth, "I was lying in the meadow, lazing about and watching the clouds. I am on holiday, and there were no other children there. We can count ourselves lucky that you were actually up here, and that the heat struck you as odd. Come on, we need to get to the shed and equip the men. There seems to be a fire source underground here. Hopefully we will get to it in time to put it out. If this turns into a major moorland fire, the fire could rage underground for years, and then our home will be in danger too." Home. That was the word that made Jonathan flinch. Marylind and her people were at home in the hill. If his father wanted to dig up the earth now, who knows how far he would have to dig and how deep he would go. It could easily happen that the elves' home would be affected. "Jonathan, stay here and show the people where it started. I need to equip the men. Alert the neighborhood and inform the mayor and the fire brigade. I will come back here later and help out." The father hurried back along the path to the farmyard, to the peat shed, where they kept all the tools, such as hoes, spades, shovels, and so on. "We might also need the tractor and the digger from our neighbor Higgins." The father briefed the people. "Jonathan is up on the north meadow. There is a small hill there. He is waiting for you and will show you where the warmest spot is. We need to go in there and see what we can do. Hopefully the fire brigade's water tanker is ready for action, because we are going to need water urgently. I think they can pump directly from the pond, but they know better than we do." Jonathan made use of the time after his father had gone and called out loudly at the entrance to the mound. "Marylind, Marylind, please come quickly." And sure enough, Marylind came out again. "Father says it is a Moor fire, and if we are lucky, and it has only just started with just one source of the blaze, we might still be able to put it out in time. But he will have to dig, and I am worried that the work might end up in your people's living room." "Oh dear, so it is what our elder had feared." Marylind sat down in the grass. "We will have to move for a while, until the danger has passed." Marylind looked serious. "But where do you intend to go? How many elves are there in your people?" "Our people consist of 167 elves." "And they are all in the hill?" "No, what are you thinking? We love the sun, the meadows, the trees. We have our own pursuits and duties. It is only after sunset that we go into the hill. That is where we have made our home." "Right, and now what?" Jonathan was worried. Where on earth was he supposed to put up 167 elves, and how was he supposed to explain that to his mother, and especially to his father? Do not worry about it. Look, you had so many questions about the clouds. You probably did not know. But we elves travel on the clouds, and if we ask politely, a larger cloud will likely shelter us for a while. Jonathan stood there with his mouth agape, thoroughly amazed. You can travel on the clouds? I have been dreaming of that for many years and always thought it was complete nonsense. There are many secrets hidden in this world, but because humans never live to be very old, they usually only discover these things by chance or when the elves give them a helping hand. Marylind thought for a moment. Jonathan, when all this is over, I will speak to the elder. Perhaps she knows a way for you to join me on a little journey in a cloud. Marylind, that would be wonderful. Jonathan was absolutely thrilled, but now he could already see the first laborers armed with spades and hoes entering the meadow. Now hurry up. The men are coming to break up the earth. But how will I find you? Here, take this little marble. If you hold it in your right hand and say my name, I will hear it and come to you as soon as I can. I will find you for sure. You have got my marble after all, so do not lose it. With that, Marylind ran back into the hill to tell her people. Jonathan, on the other hand, walked round the hill, waited for the workers, and showed them where the hottest spot on the ground was. A few hours later, when the men had already dug quite a bit, his father arrived with the tractor, the neighbor with his wheeled excavator, and the fire brigade laid a long hose up the meadow, all the way to the back of the hill. "Open the water," ordered the senior fire officer, and the pump sucked water from the pond. It came out of the nozzle at the end of the long fire hose, and two men struggled to control the jet of water. Everyone was busy extinguishing, digging and putting out pockets of embers when, suddenly and completely unexpectedly, fog set in. You could not see your hand in front of your face. The spectacle lasted less than 5 minutes. Then the fog had vanished again. People carried on and marveled at this freak of the weather. Only Jonathan had a hunch as to what had happened. The elves had indeed conjured up a cloud and vanished with it. At least, that was how he imagined it. The villagers were lucky that the Moor fire, probably caused by a lightning strike, had been spotted just in time. For 100 years ago, there was a terrible Moor fire that raged for over 4 years. Much peat went up in flames, 2 farms were completely burnt down, and 10 cows perished in the flames. It was only when winter came and brought plenty of rain that the flames were finally smothered. But ever since then, everyone in the area has learnt at school what a Moor fire is, how it can start, and just how dangerous it can become. The father and Jonathan kept watch over the pit for a full 3 days, the one the men had dug, and the fire brigade had filled with water. The water had seeped away, but no smoke was rising anymore. The flames seemed to have been successfully smothered. They could fill the pit in again and scatter a few grass seeds. In a fortnight, there will be hardly any sign left of our little Moor fire. But you, my son, are now our hero. Who knows how it would have turned out without you? Jonathan did not feel very comfortable with the thought. After all, it was not he personally who had spotted the Moor fire whilst looking up at the sky, but had been alerted by the elf Marylind. He alone would probably never have discovered the underground fire and the hot ground. "Well, father, I did not know what it was. I just thought the ground was really warm. You did everything else." Jonathan tried to wriggle out of the situation and let his father take the credit. "Boy, you are quite right," his father praised him and changed the subject. What a relief, thought Jonathan. He did not want to lie to his father, but he did not want to tell him about the elves either, a real dilemma. 2 weeks later, as the grass grew slowly on the freshly leveled ground, Jonathan was back up on the hill, Marylind's marble clenched firmly in his hand. "Marylind! Marylind! Can you hear me?" Nothing happened for a while. Then suddenly it grew misty. Jonathan remembered that he had experienced this before in the very same spot. Sure enough, the little elf soon tugged at his sleeve and the mist vanished again. "Here I am again. Speak. Here we all are again." Marylind laughed. "Yes. I just wanted to tell you that my father and the workers have put out the Moor fire and everything is back to normal. Of course, I cannot see if your home has been damaged, but you can all move back in and peace and everyday life will return." Jonathan sat down in the grass. "Well, it was just as well that I turned to you. And what? Well, do you still fancy traveling on a cloud?" "Yes, of course, I had almost forgotten. But how is that supposed to work?" "Wait a moment." Marylind turned round, walked to the entrance of the hill and called out a name. Soon after, Jonathan realized that a second elf had now appeared beside Marylind. The two of them came towards him. "This is Jonathan, the one we have to thank for our home not burning down," Marylind explained to her companion. "And this is Lorena, our oldest and wisest elf. She alone might be able to make it possible for you to take a little trip on a cloud." "Greetings, Jonathan," said the elder. "Well, you are already quite tall. Of course you cannot travel with us like that, but I have a solution. I will simply cast a spell to make you as small as we are for a while. Then, if the cloud dwellers accept it, you will go on a little cloud journey with Marylind and me. We have to travel to another tribe in Italy anyway, so you could come along. However, we will be on the road for a few days, so it would be best to discuss this with your parents first." "Oh, that is tricky. I have not told my family anything about you elves, and I really do not want to lie to my father." Jonathan could not see a way out of this. "Marylind, before I forget, the Moor fire did not cause any damage to our home. We were lucky again. A little further south, and our homes would have been lost." The elder Lorena said to Jonathan, "Bring your father here to the hill, then call Marylind. She will let me know, and I will reveal myself to your father. Tell him how grateful we are for the rescue, and he will certainly have no further objections to your journey through the clouds. I hope it will be as simple as you say." Jonathan was not at all so confident. After all, he knew his father, a man of simple nature, with a sense of justice, and opposed to any flights of fancy when it came to reality. "Just leave it to me. You will see, everything will be fine." The elf Lorena was completely confident in herself. Well, it cannot do any harm, and all he can do is say no. Jonathan said a polite goodbye and promised to come up with his father on Sunday. He still had 3 weeks of holiday left and would really love to go on this exciting adventure in a cloud. Although, even if his father were to agree to this impossible story, it would still depend on the cloud dwellers whether he would be taken along. Sunday was approaching, and Jonathan was restless and nervous. His parents soon noticed that something was weighing on his mind, but he could not quite bring himself to speak. But what was the use? Jonathan had arranged to meet at the top of the hill and had promised to bring his father along. Now, he could not wait any longer. "Father, there is something I need to tell you. Actually, I should show you." "Son, it is Sunday, but if it is that important to you, I have got time for you." Jonathan felt a surge of hope. "Could you go for a walk with me? Perhaps back up to the hill where the little Moor fire was. I will explain everything to you on the way." He looked at his father expectantly with his big eyes. "All right." Then he looked at his wife. "We will be back for lunch." His father put on his Sunday hat, took his walking stick, and father and son set off for the North Meadow. "Father, you once said that I was a hero because I saved the village from the Moor fire." "That is right, and I stand by that. Without your warning, it could have ended badly. We all know the old stories." "Yes, but actually, it was not me who first noticed something strange. I was just made aware of the hot ground and drew my own conclusions, alerted you, and that is how everything got set in motion." "Yes, but you did exactly the right thing. Only, tell me, who showed you the hot ground?" Father, you will not believe me, but right at the top of the hill, I will introduce her to you, and you will understand what the hill is all about. Please bear with me for a moment." The two continued on, and finally reached the top of the North Meadow. The father walked round the hill to see if the ground was growing over again with grass and meadow flowers, for the local farmers needed the hay from up here for the winter. Jonathan, however, had gone to the almost invisible opening in the hill and called softly, "Marylind, Marylind." All the while, he held the marble tightly in his right hand. There she was, accompanied by the elf Lorena. "Nice to see you," said Marylind. "And, were you able to bring your father with you?" asked Lorena. "He is waiting behind the hill." So the three of them set off, and Jonathan's heart was pounding in his throat. What would his father say when he found himself face to face with two elves? What would he say when he heard of the strange journey that lay ahead? Questions upon questions. His heart was filled with dread. His father had examined the ground, let his gaze wander into the distance, then settled down on his coat in the grass, and waited for the things that were now about to come his way. Then he spotted Jonathan, but he seemed to be alone. At any rate, the tall grass left no room for any other conclusion. He could only see his son's head. But that was about to change in an instant. "Father, I do not know how to put this, but standing beside me are Marylind and Lorena, two elves. You will not be able to see them, but if you would like, they can make themselves visible to you. They have a few things to explain to you." "Jonathan, I do not understand." Then Lorena, as the eldest, took matters into her own hands. With a snap of her fingers, she made herself and Marylind visible to Jonathan's father. The father's eyes widened and he was a little startled, but Lorena spoke in a gentle voice. "Greetings, Jonathan's father. We are of the Elven folk, who have lived undetected in this area for centuries and have found our home in this very hill. Your son, Jonathan, saved our home from the flames of the Moor fire by recognizing the danger, informing you immediately, and ensuring you took the right action straight away to prevent the worst from happening. We are therefore deeply indebted to you and to everyone who helped." The father slowly gathered his thoughts. "Elves? I thought they belonged in fairy tales and legends." He looked down at the delicate creatures. "So it was you who alerted Jonathan to the danger, therefore, we, the villagers, owe you our deepest gratitude." Lorena replied, "I think we helped one another. Unfortunately, circumstances made it necessary for us to reveal ourselves, for we actually stopped showing ourselves to humans many years ago. Too often, this has led to misunderstandings between our peoples." "Yes, that is true. I would not know what the people in the village would say if they knew that a race of elves lived right nearby." "Exactly. That is why everything should stay as it is, because people do not like what is foreign, and certainly not what is inexplicable. But there is something else." Jonathan interjected. "Father, on the day we discovered the Moor fire, I was lying in the grass, looking up at the clouds. I was imagining what it might be like inside such a huge cloud." "Just foggy," said his father. "That is exactly what I thought too. Do you remember, when the men started working, how it suddenly got foggy here for a few minutes as well?" "Yes, that was strange, in broad daylight and in the sunshine." "Marylind, that is because I had summoned a cloud so that our whole people could travel with it. We were not sure how things would turn out with the underground fire right next to our hill home." Jonathan, "Father, I would like to travel on a cloud like that once too, and the elves can make it happen. Marylind and Lorena would accompany me, though I would be away for a few days. I am still on holiday after all." Lorena, "And as the eldest, I wanted to ask your permission to let your dear son go on this unusual journey." As she spoke, she touched the father very gently with her index finger. "That is all a bit much for me to take in. There are elves, Yes, a whole elven people. They have been living on my land for centuries and want to let my son travel in a cloud. Have I understood all this correctly, or am I just daydreaming? Marylind, it is exactly as you have summarized it. Jonathan, do you really want to do something as crazy as traveling in a cloud? Yes, Father. It would be my heart's desire to get to know this other world. The father pondered. He had never been in a situation like this before. The boy wanted to travel in a cloud. By train, he could imagine that. By ship, that was already more dangerous, but with something as absurd as a cloud. Yet he had been there himself when a cloud descended and seemed to carry the elves away from the hill. He had only seen the mist and could find no explanation for it. Now, looking back, it all made much more sense to him. Why should he stand in his son's way on this adventure? But then, he still had one important question. Jonathan is a big lad and weighs a good hundredweight. You elves, on the other hand, are petite and light as a feather. How is that supposed to work? Lorena pulled a magic wand from her cloak. Just like that. She touched Jonathan, and in an instant, the big Jonathan was no taller or heavier than the two dainty elves. Then Lorena touched him again, and Jonathan was back to his normal size. The father swallowed. It was all a bit much for him. Now he was witnessing magic right before his eyes. How long would Jonathan be away? We will be back here in exactly 8 days, Lorena promised the father, holding out her hand to him. I do not feel comfortable with the idea, to be perfectly honest. But good old Jonathan has done both your people and our village a great service. That is why I will agree to this journey. When should we set off, and what does he need to pack? We will set off straight away, and he does not need to pack anything at all, for in his traveling form you will hardly have any things for him. We will take care of everything. Lorena pointed her wand at a large cumulus cloud, and it began to sink immediately. Within a few minutes, a mist set in. Father and son said their goodbyes. The father did not feel at all reassured as Jonathan, now tiny once more, disappeared into the mist with the elves. The cloud rose, and he was alone on the hill. How am I supposed to explain this to my wife? This thought occupied his mind on the way home. I cannot very well say he is off with elves in a cloud. My wife will think I have lost my mind. Oh, I will just say, well, what shall I just say? The father pondered this until he got home. Something would surely occur to him. Fishing. Jonathan has gone fishing with a few friends and will be back in a week. That is exactly what he would say. It had happened quite often during the holidays, though not quite so suddenly. Jonathan walked hand in hand with Marylind and Lorena into the mist. Then the ground changed, and he was in the middle of the cloud, where there was no mist at all. On the contrary, one could see everything clearly, and below him, as if through a glass floor, he saw his father getting smaller and smaller. The cloud rose to the highest heights, right up to its cruising altitude. Right then, little friend Jonathan, now I would like to introduce you to the cloud folk, who have agreed to take a human on this unique journey. With that, she touched Jonathan with her magic wand, and he realized that he and the elves were standing in a group of other beings. So this was the cloud folk. They were larger than elves, yet still seemed as light as a feather. On every cloud, at least the large cumulus clouds, lives a whole cloud people. May I introduce you to Jonathan, the first human to embark on a cloud journey. We are very grateful that you have taken our protege in. Lorena bowed before one of the cloud people. I am Molderai, the king of this cloud people. I have already been told that it was you who helped the elven people. It is my pleasure to take you to our home, this cloud. Today we are traveling to Italy and then back again, because the winds are shifting there above Vesuvius. Whatever you need for your comfort and well-being will be well looked after. Jonathan was not quite sure how to behave in the presence of a king of a cloud people, so he made sure to give a proper bow. I am very grateful to the Elven people for arranging this, and to you for granting permission for this journey. Just 3 weeks ago, he had been wondering what it would be like, and now here he was, in a cloud himself, watching the world spin beneath him. The cloud was huge, and had several levels, though these were constantly shifting. There were cozy, soft places to sit, and sleeping berths. Here there were sweets, there hearty food. You could change your clothes, enjoy the view, play with the others, or have a chat. The journey was completely silent. The favorable winds pushed the cloud along, much like a sailing boat is driven by the winds. Only such a cloud was probably 100 times larger than the biggest sailing ship. Jonathan could soon make out the Rhine. Then, when he looked again, they were already in Switzerland and soon over the Alps. Then the Italian sun shone and the journey continued as far as Vesuvius. Here, the cloud descended to the ground as thick fog. The elves, Lorena and Marylind, got out, as they were supposed to visit the elven folk at Vesuvius. Jonathan, on the other hand, ascended again with the cloud folk, and they set off on their journey home. He had made friends amongst the cloud folk, and soon the children were playing with him, whatever one could play in such a huge cloud. Hide and seek, or cloud ball, all sorts of things. There were not really any clear rules regarding the daily routine. You could eat when you were hungry, have a bath when you fancied it, go to sleep when you were tired, drink a delicious cloud juice, or simply watch the landscape drifting by beneath you. After 8 days, the cloud descended upon the hill again, and Jonathan's father was waiting for him. No sooner had he set foot on the grass of his homeland than he returned to his normal size. "Oh, father, I have got so much to tell you." Jonathan could not stop talking about everything he had seen and experienced. This unique adventure, traveling in a cloud with the cloud folk, was to shape his whole life, and after studying engineering, he devoted himself entirely to the construction of airships. So, if you ever find yourself wandering through thick fog, do take a closer look to see whether it really is just ordinary fog, or whether a cumulus cloud has settled there to take elves on a journey. And with that, we have reached the end of our fairy tale for today.